What's up, everybody? You are listening to The Climb, a sports podcast with Morgan Barnes and friends. I, of course, am the creator of this YouTube channel where you'll find this podcast, Morgan's Madness on YouTube, and I also host an incredible gaming podcast, The Chompcast. It's a video game show you can find just about anywhere, at SwordChomp on Instagram as well. But this podcast is about sports. This is a great way for me to vent and hopefully have my friends on occasionally talk sports. I have always had a deep passion for just analyzing and following sports my entire life. And a lot of my biggest inspirations for podcasting, even with my gaming show, came from sports journalism, like Colin Cowherd and the Dan Le Batard show, and a lot of these shows that I just really respect. So I wanted to make this as an outcrop or a venting for me, because a lot of my friends are very casual about their sports love, so they're not going to listen to me rambling on about all these sports theories and things like that I have. And yet I care deeply about sports, and I would like to get this shit off my chest. So I thought, what better way than to start putting some podcasts up on my YouTube channel. And hey, if they take off, maybe we'll get up on iTunes and other places like that. So I got a lot of fun topics to talk about tonight for our first show. So I hope you enjoy the premiere episode of The Climb, named after, of course, the climb for the pinnacle of sports, the championship that all teams are striving for, the climb that all athletes, the fighting adversity. And The Climb is actually the name of the song that I wrote that plays at the beginning of the podcast as well. The name just seemed kind of faded, so I think it should work out well. Up first on the very first episode of The Climb, the topic, well, let's do a rundown. Let's start with a rundown of everything I want to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about Tiger Woods was back in the news today, which is pretty cool because he played pretty well this weekend. And I have some thoughts on that. The whole Kawhi Leonard injury is really fascinating to me as a longtime Spurs fan who grew up in San Antonio. The Nick Foles, why I think he should be the quarterback and has earned the spot for the Philadelphia Eagles. And from Duncan to the Hawks, or Tom Brady to the Browns, what could have been, and sort of just a discussion about how lucky athletes get, and also that's not to take away from how great they are, but how the situations you're put in matter. Not to mention, I can only imagine, as my starting point here, that Aaron Rodgers must have just lost his shit when he was watching this Super Bowl, right? I mean, I can only imagine that as Aaron Rodgers was sitting there in his living room, I presume, sadly, no Olivia Munn, now they have broken up, which is a tragedy. So maybe he had some other beautiful woman there, or maybe just some friends. No Olivia Munn sitting there, maybe steaming at the fact that the Packers have failed him once again, and he also had a really frustrating injury this year, that he's watching Nick Foles win the Super Bowl MVP. That has just got to be infuriating. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is almost the opposite of a Nick Foles type situation for the Philadelphia Eagles. Look at it this way. Nick Foles had some struggles. He had that really good season with the Eagles and then kind of bounced around a little bit from the Chiefs and the Rams. And then he had an incredible playoff run and then just a magical Super Bowl, right? But Aaron Rodgers has been in this frustrating scenario for the past several years where he is just in the prime of his career. He's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. And Green Bay just doesn't feel like they're giving him enough help. And he has to be sitting there. I mean, I imagine he just drop-kicked his bowl of nachos or his fucking six-pack. I'm trying to imagine what Aaron Rodgers would be drinking when he watches the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, I've seen in interviews he's a pretty big Game of Thrones fan, so maybe he's more of a wine guy. I don't know. I just can't see Aaron Rodgers sitting around drinking a light beer. but maybe he's kind of a wine guy because he's not to say he's an elitist, but he's kind of a little bit like he knows he's great. He's not afraid to embrace that life. Maybe he likes to get his Game of Thrones on a little bit. A nice, good glass of wine. Maybe a nice steak for the Super Bowl. He's a very introspective, interesting guy. So I just try to imagine he's just like throwing his shit all over his house as he's watching Nick Foles just dissect and annihilate the New England Patriots during the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl MVP, because Nick Foles has now earned what I think is a starting job, and he's proved he has what it takes at this point in his career to win a Super Bowl, and he deserves it. But he is not in the same league of an Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers just must be infuriated by that. I can just imagine. Look at the help they're giving Nick Foles. The Eagles are exactly how you want to run an organization and how you build a team. Every position is incredible. You know what I mean? From Aguilar to Alshon Jeffrey, to their running backs like Blount, to their offensive line, which is just incredible, to their defensive front, which is just the pressure they were constantly putting on Tom Brady, even though he was still dissecting him in the Super Bowl, and the fact that they could lose their starting quarterback and put Nick Foles in and still be incredible. They have constructed this team perfectly. The coaching, how ballsy they were. This is exactly how every team is working to construct the perfect team in the offseason. And Aaron Rodgers, I can only imagine, says, look, I'm an all-time talent. I'm going to go down as maybe one of the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks ever to play the game, at least from a talent perspective. And you guys aren't giving me any fucking help. And motherfucking Nick Foles is the goddamn Super Bowl MVP while I'm sitting at home stewing with my red wine and my non-Olivia Munn-filled couch. So it's crazy. It's crazy. And I will say that as far as Foles goes, I think he has earned that job. I do. I think that I know technically you would look at someone like Carson Wentz, who is the starter that got hurt for the Philadelphia Eagles, and you would say yes. Yes, Carson Wentz was the better talent, but all teams are looking for is 2 things. 1, how do you handle the pressure of the playoffs? And 2, can you win a Super Bowl? That's what they're looking for, and Nick Foles has now proven to them he can do both of those things, probably for a cheaper price than you'd have to pay Carson Wentz because he's more talented. So I know some people think it's controversial, but I say, look, the reason you drafted Carson Wentz is because you wanted a quarterback who could win you the Super Bowl. You got one. Trade Carson Wentz for some other incredible pieces and just keep this thing going. I would say keep Carson Wentz as a backup, but I don't think that Carson Wentz views himself as a backup, and maybe he's not. But it's just one of those things where you look at that Philadelphia Eagles team and how they just obliterated people with Carson Wentz, and then how they obliterated like the Vikings and all the yards Foles racked up against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and you say, man, you just have to be a good quarterback to look great on that offense because it's a great team. It's a great team. It's a team sport. And that's what makes sports so interesting to me. You can look at someone like Tom Brady, who, yes, I think he's the greatest quarterback ever to play the game, certainly has the best career. And what I look for in the clutch, everything Tom Brady normally does in the last 2 minutes of a game, is exactly how I judge the heroics of an athlete. And then he has the biggest Super Bowl comeback of all time and the most Super Bowl rings. So yes, I do believe Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time. But he has had some great teams, and he's had some mediocre teams. And this year was a great example. You can look at both sides of the Super Bowl and say, on one side you had a nearly perfect team with a good quarterback who played great, and they won and deserved to win that Super Bowl. And on the other side, you had the Patriots, who had the greatest quarterback of all time. He slung 505 yards. 505 yards. He set a Super Bowl record. He was just slicing and dicing that whole game. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. The incredible Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots, and they still lost. Why? Because their team was nowhere near as good as the Eagles, and it's a team game at the end of the day. Like, Foles has proven to me he can be a great quarterback, but his teammates are so much better. The talent around him is so much better than Tom Brady, but that is not, I think, a detriment. That's the goal, right? That's what's so funny about all these sports debates I hear that drive me crazy. It's just this constant back and forth. Well, this person has better talent. This person does this with less talent. Well, of course. That's great, right? But at the end of the day, the goal is to win a championship and to surround your players with other great players. And that's exactly what the Eagles did. And the Patriots are frustrated, and they had some bad luck with injuries, but they should, with Edelman being out, and of course they lost Cooks at the beginning of the Super Bowl, but they were not the better team. And it doesn't matter if they have, just watching Tom Brady play that game was magnificent, but they were not the better team. And that's what the whole sport is determining at the end. The climb, the pinnacle of that championship is trying to determine who has the best team, not who has the best player or the best handful of players. It's the best team. And that's why, sure, it's interesting to view those things back and forth to see who's the most complete team. But I'm not going to hold it against Nick Foles that he had the better team around him. But it is worth mentioning. And Foles really impressed me because, like I said before, the things you're looking for, being calm in the playoffs, you could just tell. He was on the podium after he won the game. He said, he was interviewed, and they said, how did you feel before the game? Were you nervous? He said, I just felt calm. And his play showed it. The one interception he had wasn't even really his fault. It was a damn good pass that just kind of flipped the wrong direction. And he played the game of his life, and the Eagles were the much better team, and they took a lot more chances on fourth down, and they still almost lost. It's weird you look at the score and say, no, they won by 8 points, but technically speaking, if they don't convert that fourth down, the game is probably over. And yet, it was a touchdown and then a field goal later, so it's just interesting to look at that and see Nick Foles really come of age. And I've said this for a long time. I believe that a quarterback goes from a boy to a man in the playoffs. That's why I was looking at the Vikings, and I was just so disappointed because it was the complete opposite situation of what happened with Nick Foles, and it sucks. It sucks. And when you're in the playoffs, you're going to grow so much under the pressure and the calmness of dealing with the adversity and the stress of the playoffs. And then if you get a chance to play in the Super Bowl, all the hype, all the media, everything that goes along with that game, and to come out there and just, don't look shaky, you don't look like you're in over your head. We've seen that before with many quarterbacks, and maybe to some degree it is the pinnacle in that sport. Maybe to some degree we make it out to be bigger than it is. I think most of it comes from when players make it out in their head because they know how important it is to win that championship. They probably just get inside their own head. It's a big deal, but I assume if you're playing big fucking football games your whole life, this one just feels a little bit bigger. But obviously I've never been there, and you hear players talk about how incredible it feels to step out during the Super Bowl. So that's what I'm always looking for. How do they handle the pressure? And Nick Foles leveled up in my eyes because he got a chance, really for the first time. He had this one sort of bad luck game where they were winning against Andrew Luck many seasons ago, and it was kind of just one of those miracle games that Andrew Luck pulled out. And it's not indicative of who he was, and he's a much better player now. And he showed us, despite that rough game with the Falcons, after obliterating the Vikings and then destroying the Patriots in the Super Bowl, that Nick Foles has what it takes to be a Super Bowl MVP, and that's all you're looking for. So I say trade Carson Wentz. I know it's not popular, but you got everything you need in Nick Foles, as long as you're building a good team around him, and that's the goal, right? Sure, if you have a crappier team, Carson Wentz might be able to carry you a little more, but what's the idea there, that you're going to build a crappier team? It just seems strange to me. So, and I like Foles. I like his personality, and Carson Wentz is still a question mark, right? We don't know. Maybe Carson Wentz has more talent, but would crumble in the Super Bowl. We don't fucking know. Maybe not. Question marks. Nick Foles, no question marks. And I was before the podcast today, I was watching the Spurs, play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Spurs won. It was a really good game on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a nice turning point game sort of after the All-Star break. But as a Spurs fan, it just didn't mean a lot to me, because I'm sitting there looking at that going, well, without Kawhi Leonard, what the fuck does it even mean? Sure, the Cavs lost, so I guess to them it's more of a demoralizing blow. We can't even beat the Spurs without Kawhi Leonard. How the fuck are we supposed to beat Golden State or the Rockets in the NBA Finals? You're not going to. Barring a miracle, it's just not going to happen. But the sad thing for a Spurs fan like myself is it felt like a hollow win. Yes, we won a tough game against the Cavs. There's no way we can compete against the Warriors without Kawhi Leonard. There's no way. And this whole Kawhi Leonard injury is fascinating to me as a longtime Spurs fan, because I remember when Kawhi got hurt against Golden State in that series, and they were talking about him coming back. There was like a long break. It was like a 3-day break between Game 3 and Game 4, and they were like, maybe Kawhi can come back and save the series. Well, he didn't. They decided to play it safe, which was a smart decision. They got swept, and just let Kawhi get healthy for next year. And then, the entire offseason and half of the regular season passes, and Kawhi is still not out there. And then it comes out that he's been medically cleared to play, but he doesn't feel quite right, or he wants a second opinion from his doctors, or he doesn't want to play. And that's just, the whole situation is just fucking weird, and it's frustrating, because I believe in my heart that if Kawhi's out there, we can at least give the Rockets or Golden State hell, because that's how good Kawhi is. I mean, just look how good the Spurs are now without the third best player on the planet. I go Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Steph Curry. And that's just because the only reason I put Leonard over Steph Curry is because he plays legendary defense, and that's important to me. But Steph's incredible, and and then I'd have to think about my fifth spot, but I know my top four easily. Boom, 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 right off the top of the head. So when you have a top 3 player coming back and your team is already really good, like the Spurs showed today against the Cavs, you could really make some waves in the playoffs. So that's why this feels like a hollow victory for me, and just sort of another just confusing, frustrating situation with Kawhi. And I feel like maybe, this is just a theory, I'm basing this just off conjecture, that maybe Kawhi's thinking in his heart, we don't have any chance to beat these guys this year. And sure, I could play right now. Technically, I am medically clear, but I don't feel 110%. And I want to feel like maybe just, even if he's 99%, 95%, as an athlete, you know your own body, and it's not worth coming back and risking it if you don't feel like you really have a shot. So maybe if he, is feeling a lot better in a couple of weeks, we could see him in the playoffs. That'd be a really fucked up, dark horse, right? Hey, guess what? Kawhi hasn't played all season, but he's here for the playoffs, so all these teams are fucked. I mean, that would I think scare the shit out of a lot of teams. I just don't know if I see that happening. So Tiger Woods had a pretty interesting showing today. I believe he finished even par for the tournament at the Honda Classic, and I am really excited about this because I love the sport of golf. I love playing golf. I don't really watch golf, but I follow it unless it's the majors, in which case I do watch those because I think they're incredible and I have a lot of respect for the game. And I know a lot of people don't like golf, but Tiger Woods made golf interesting for people that don't give a fuck about golf. And he has just been so injured and out of the game for so long, and he's just been a different person. I can't even remember the last time I saw Tiger Woods competing for a major. So this is really cool to me because he was competitive. He was at one point, I think, only 5 strokes back or something like that. And that's really cool to see. This tournament doesn't fucking mean anything to me and most people. He wants to be ready for the Masters. So I'm crossing my fingers he can stay healthy. Nothing makes golf more fun than seeing Tiger Woods playing on a Sunday in a major. And I tell you this, Tiger Woods, to me, has always been the kind of person who, if you put him in a pressure situation, you get the best out of him. He hasn't even played in a meaningful golf tournament in years. He doesn't even know what it's like to feel alive anymore. I can only imagine, to go from that level of competition to where the pressure's on and you're competing in something like a Super Bowl or an NBA Finals or a golf major, and then to just not feel that as an athlete, it's got to feel very empty. Pressure and stress makes the best athletes reach incredible levels. Watching Tiger Woods play playoff golf when I was younger, you knew that you were awakening the beast within him, and he played so much better when the pressure was on. And that's what the best athletes do, the Bradys, the Jordans. They play their best under fire. And Tiger Woods has not been under fire, and he doesn't even know what it's like to feel the heat. He has been just freezing cold and a broken man, and I want to know this old Tiger, this 40-year-old Tiger, I want to know when he gets his game together, how he handles that magic. Like, does he click back into the psyche of old Tiger where he has the will to beat you? I think that he would. And I think that would be really, really, really cool to see. Because, Tiger Woods is in the, obviously the latter portion of his career. Now, golf is a little different because and he finished 12th in today's tournament, by the way, which is very hopeful for him. But golf is a weird sport because you can have a longer life than some other sports because it's very physically exhausting, and much more than people think. But it's not like football where you're just getting beat up and injured, and people are like retiring with like broken spines and shit. It's nothing like that. But it's a sport where you can have. He's 42 years old, by the way, which is crazy to think about. He's 42. He doesn't have a lot of time left. But there have been older golfers that have been really competitive because of the nature of golf. Even though it is a physically demanding sport compared to like something like football, it is definitely not. I mean, that's why you can go out to the golf course and see 50 or 60-year-old golfers out there having a good time. So I want to see what 42-year-old Tiger looks like when the pressure of winning a major is laid on his back. I want to see if we can awaken the Tiger Woods I grew up with again. I think that would be incredible because I have a lot of respect, and this was like my main topic of the show. I was joking about what if Tim Duncan had been drafted by the Hawks or Tom Brady had been drafted by the Browns. Their careers could have been very different, no matter how good they were. Situations could be everything. I remember the Spurs, the only reason they were really bad that year is they had a really big injury to David Robinson. So their record was awful, and then they got a little help with the lottery, but they were nowhere near as bad of a team as they appeared once David Robinson came back. And then you just add Tim Duncan there, who is an incredible all-time Hall of Fame player, and you had basically some of the best teams that have played the game. So same with Tom Brady. Like, as incredible as Tom Brady is, what if he'd been drafted by the fucking Browns? You know what I mean? His whole career could have been completely different. And maybe he would have had the desire and the will to still make a name for himself and the Browns, but would it have been 5 championships? Like, there's just circumstance and luck and all those things that play into it. But my larger point here is that they were put in good situations. And if you put incredible players into good situations, you end up with Tim Duncan had 5 rings. Tom Brady had 5 rings. That's why I thought they were a good comparison. Very, very two athletes that I have a tremendous amount of admiration for. And they both won championships in their 40s. Tim Duncan's last championship he won, he was 40. That was the one. Kawhi Leonard won the MVP, but Tim Duncan was still a vital part of that team. And, of course, Tom Brady won the Super Bowl last year with that incredible comeback against the Falcons. And if Tiger Woods can do it, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is how well athletes respond to age. Like, age gets us all. And people always have these debates about who they think is the best athlete of all time and this and that. Like, Michael Jordan was incredible. I've loved Michael Jordan, but at the end of his year, it was not pretty. And there are other circumstances that definitely played into that, but I don't look at Michael Jordan's career maybe quite as impressively as something like a Tom Brady, just because Tom Brady still was able to do it at a later age. I mean, if you can win a Super Bowl, maybe your best Super Bowl, at the age of 40, 10 years apart from when you won your first one, or it was probably even longer than that. Like, you're showing that at any age or at any point in your career, you could wreak havoc on the field. And I just don't necessarily feel that way about Michael Jordan. I feel like he had that one pocket where he obviously became what most people believe the greatest basketball player of all time. But the latter portion of his career was not pretty. And it's very weird to look at the latter portion of like Tim Duncan, or the latter portion of Tom Brady and say, oh my God, the end of their careers are almost just as good, if not better, than the beginning of their careers. And that's just fascinating to me. And there's a lot of factors that play into that, but still, it's still a career achievement for me. And I look at that and I say, oh my God, it's too bad. And maybe LeBron will have some of that on his side. I know a lot of people fight about LeBron or Michael Jordan or whatever. I like to wait for people to retire before I get too much into those debates, because he still has a lot of time left to play. But one thing I've always thought was really impressive about LeBron James is that he's never hurt, really. And I think that's pretty impressive for a man of his size. And even though he has been accused of taking some games off here and there, because like most NBA players, he knows that most of the regular season is fucking pointless, he is not hurt very often. And I think that's really cool. I do. You can look at a lot of athletes that are hurt. Kawhi Leonard is my favorite player in the NBA as a Spurs fan, and I'm already a little concerned because this injury situation, and that sucks for me because Kawhi plays with such tenacity on defense and offense that I look at those injuries and say, oh, well, those things could crop back up with how hard he plays every single fucking night. So that sucks. And I think that there's something to be said for athletes that don't get hurt very often. I don't know. You could say there's a lot of luck involved, sure, but I look at LeBron's career, and other than that weird cramping game against the Spurs in the NBA Finals where it was too hot, the air conditioner was broke, and they swamped LeBron out of there. As a Spurs fan, I laugh because I was obviously happy that we won that series. But that was barely an injury, and he played the rest of the series just fine. Like LeBron, I don't really recall him having any major injuries, and that means a lot. Durability, reliability, he's always there. He's built like a freaking workhorse, and he doesn't get hurt. And that's really incredible. And you could say the same for a lot of people like Brady. He's 40 years old, and he's still crushing it in the NFL. And that's a sport where one bad hit can basically be the end of your goddamn career and maybe your life if you get hit wrong. And that's pretty amazing too. So, and that's even more fascinating when you kind of divert back to Tiger Woods, who's 42 years old and has had nothing but injuries in golf. And that's not, again, golf is much more exhaustive than people think, but compared to football, it's like, man, like, that's just strange, right? Like Tiger Woods has been plagued by injuries in golf, of all sports, and he looks bigger and stronger than anybody out there on the course. So that's just always something I've always been kind of pondering around in my head. Like, I imagine Tiger Woods has been just as frustrated as his fans were, because he appears to be a very healthy young man by all accounts, and he appears to be the healthiest man on the goddamn course, and yet he's just been plagued by frustrating injuries. And that's really how I come full circle in this podcast. When I think about longevity, I think about careers, I think about all these incredible players, and how impressed I am by players that are able to make that climb and reach that pinnacle over and over again, even in their late age, because it shows a continued drive and relentless passion for something. And they're competing against the youngest and the brightest and the most talented players of multiple generations, and they're still standing there 40 plus years old, holding up the trophy, saying, I'm still better than you, youngin', I'm still better than you. And that just kind of makes me smile. It does. It's been a lot of fun. I feel a lot better getting this off my chest. I hope you enjoyed the first premiere episode of The Climb, and hopefully I'll have more to come. So, by the way, if you enjoy this show, you can catch my other podcast. It is the Chompcast from Sword Chomp, at Sword Chomp on Instagram, and the Chompcast in iTunes, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, and everything like that. And of course, you found this on Morgan's Madness, so I hope you enjoy my YouTube channel. This has been great. First episode of The Climb is in the books, so we'll begin our podcast climb to further and more incredible podcasts in the future. Hopefully, I got some friends that are more experts in their own sports of choosing, so I hopefully will have them on from time to time as well. Thanks a lot for listening. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed my insights into a lot of these sports stories. I hope you enjoyed the metaphor or the visual image of Aaron Rodgers drop kicking a bowl of nachos in frustration as he watches Nick Foles hold the Super Bowl MVP trophy up. And we'll see you next week. Peace.